Hello, I'm Chris. Welcome back to Marine Corner. Hope you're doing well and having a good week so far. This is a bit more of a rambly video, a bit of a ramble and a bit of a chat more than an actual. This is what we're talking about. There's no crib notes. There's no plan. There's no anything like that. It's just off the dome. I'm a bit thirsty. I've just been running around the shops getting some bits for later on for tea and for lunch. Not having anything exciting, just some pasta and some toasties for lunch, but it's better than it'll be nice. Don't know why I said that, but I'm just sharing these things. But yesterday we went to the High Peak Bookshop. We didn't get there till I think around 3:20, so by that point it was quite late in the day. And I think, to be honest with you, I think we needed more time there. Personally, I feel like if we'd have got there earlier, maybe had something to eat, I don't know, like beans on toast, or I don't know what food they actually did, because we didn't actually I didn't look at the menu. I should have done, but like I think it would have been better if we'd have got there about dinner time, had some food there, then had a wander around, and then got some books, and then sat and had a coffee and a cake and a read. To make more of a day of it. It did feel like a long way for a couple of hours. It was to me it was worth going, because I got 6 books, which I've got in 2 bags, so I'll show you them shortly. So we got there. It was really nice. It's a really cool bookshop. Everyone's really friendly. We got 2 cakes, one each. So my partner had a lemon and blueberry cake and a cup of tea, and I had a Black Stag cake, which was like an ale cake, but it was like a local ale to them. It was really nice. It's not something I'm not really into. Never had an ale cake before, or like a Guinness cake, or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, it was really nice. And then I had a mocha, and it was like, do you want a large, do you want a large or a small, or not large? And then do you want milk chocolate or dark chocolate? It was like, dark chocolate. But I felt like I'd been asked loads of questions. Simple questions, but after the travel and like, I want to get to the books kind of thing, my mind wasn't working. But yeah, it's a really cool place. I didn't really feel like because I didn't really know who was working there and who wasn't really, but the staff that I did speak to was really friendly, because it was quite busy. So I was going to try and take some pictures, but it just felt every time I look up to take a picture, somebody would be walking around and walking past. Some of the people there, so when we got there, we got this big table for the 2 of us. So we had to share this table, so we got talking to a woman and her husband, but her husband worked well, so he was in the car waiting while she had a cup of coffee. So we got talking to her, so that was like nice, sharing the table with other people, because it's nice when you, like, I wouldn't want to not share my table with people if they can sit down. But yeah, I think if I was going again, I'd want to go earlier, have something to eat, make a bit more, and then sit and have a read for a bit, and then chill out a bit more. I don't know, like, be able to buy books and then peruse what you've got, or think, oh, maybe I should have got that, or maybe I should have got this. Whereas, because we were kind of at the end of the day, before it closed, it was kind of like, well, that's what you've got now. So yeah, I think for that, the selection of books is really good. Like, there was books there I was hoping to see that I didn't see, but then the books that were there I wasn't expecting to see. I wasn't expecting to see, like, there's got a really good classic section that I wasn't expecting to have as much choice and as much depth, and which was nice. There's a little fantasy sci-fi section that seemed to be, for me, more heavily sci-fi than fantasy, but that's because I probably know a bit more about like, not generic sci-fi, but like more about a good idea of sci-fi. Whereas what's fantasy is kind of, to me, it's like John Gwynne, Joe Abercrombie, Brandon Sanderson, stuff like that, Tolkien. That kind of is more my sci-fi. So if it's anything new or up and coming fantasy or other authors, I'm not well versed in that. Whereas with like sci-fi, if it's like Arthur C. Clarke or if it's the Strugatsky brothers or stuff like that, I'm quite well aware of. They had a really cool art section, which was I didn't expect them to have like an art section. They had all sorts of art books, reasonably priced when you think of art books. My only problem is with art books is the size of them, and how often do you read them? How often do you look at the art books that you get? It's kind of a catch-22 with me because, I have a lot of books as it is, and I don't want to say that as like I'm bragging that I have a lot of books. I wish I had less books unread, but less books and all of them read. To be honest with you, I know I've just been to a bookshop and bought books. But I am trying to read what I own. I have for the last few years done systematic rereads where I reread certain books in certain months and stuff like that. That's not something I've been doing lately, just because I am trying to get this backlog of books down. My partner said read 52 books off your library, out of your library, so I am doing that. I did get some library books the other day, but I think I'm just going to take them back, just because I'm inundated with books as it is. I've got plenty to read without borrowing from the library, so I'm just going to take everything back and I'm just going to do that. Anyway, that's a bit of a tangent. But yeah, the bookshop's really cool. It's got some, like it had a lot of, it had a music section, a local author section, which I didn't quite get to till the end of it and didn't really get chance to look at anything there really, unfortunately. They had a bit of a true crime section, which I was looking for something for my dad. But not that the books they had weren't good for my dad. My dad is very much a, like, perfect example, like this horror book, say, for instance, he likes little stories about murders. He doesn't like a full book about, say, Ed Gein or, something like that, Charlie Manson or whatever. He likes a contained couple of pages on each one. So they didn't have anything like that for my dad. So I was looking for Christmas. What else? Yeah, and then he had a World War II history section and war section and social history that I didn't really look into or look into. They did have a couple of books I didn't get as well. They had a general fiction and they have a crime fiction section. They had two comfy chairs that looked really comfy. I didn't sit on one because I would have stayed there all day otherwise. But yeah, it's just a great bookshop. And then they had some stuff that people sell, local people sell. Like there was one a tote bag that I nearly got. It says unsupervised in a bookshop with a credit card, and I thought that was a really cool tote bag. I did have a giraffe tote bag, and I can't remember where it went. But I do find tote bags aren't quite they do seem to be a bit more of a feminine item, but I love a tote bag. I usually put my food in my tote bag and then my box in a messenger bag. But yeah, I do like a tote bag. So yeah, they had some really cool stuff. My partner got some books. I got some books. Yeah, she got 2 books. I got 6. But I when we read, when we go anywhere, I feel like, no disrespect to her or anyone who reads like specific genres, like she said, like a lot of chick lit and stuff like that, and she seems to be and sometimes a bit of non-fiction as well. She reads a bit of non-fiction as well. But it seems she does seem to, and she seems to have branched out a bit more by thrillers now. I don't know if I'm getting the glare on my phone there. That's better. I don't know. I don't want to say that she reads narrowly at all. I don't want to say anything negative about. She reads what she likes, and I get so excited when she's going to pick a book because I'm like, what is she going to read? You know what I mean? Because I'm always like, oh, I've probably planned about 6 books in advance, and sometimes I stick to it, sometimes I don't. But it's quite, sometimes I can be quite stringent with it. So it's nice to see somebody who's got a bit more impulsive and goes, I'm going to read that next. And then it's like, well, why are you reading that? I have no inclination of what she's going to read or why she's going to read it. And I think, so I don't want to say that, but because I read so widely, there's not really anything I wouldn't read. I was like that in primary school. I know this is a bit of a tangent, but I just wanted a bit of a chatty video. I didn't really want to, but when I used to read, going back to what I was trying to say is, well, it's kind of to do with this because it's kind of, they're all a bit random. Not all of them are random, but there's a mixture in there. So, like when I was in primary school, I would literally read anything. I remember in year 6, which I would have been, because I'm August, so I was the youngest in the school, or the youngest in the year. So when I was in like year 6, I was 10. I wasn't quite 11. So I was 10, reading like a Richard Attenborough book that was about that thick. Books don't faze me. When I put off bigger books now, it's more because I think it's more like a counting. I want to count more. I want to I think it's more because I'm counting my books more than I'm stopping myself reading. I think the bigger books. To be honest, it's not that I'm scared. I've got War and Peace. I wanted War and Peace before I got it as a present. I love the edition I got. Excuse me. I love the edition I got, but I'm not scared by that book even though it's thick. But yeah, so going to a bookshop and I'm looking at art section. I left the World War II section alone because I've got a lot of World War II books I haven't read, so I felt like I was inundated with that, and I think that's a good section to. I think I've got enough variety in the books I have on them sections to leave those alone for now. But and then the general section, but and then they had authors that I have recently read, like Gabriel Garcia Marquez. He had a couple of his books that I wanted to read, but I was like, because I'd just read one, I didn't really want to read another one. So yeah, and then there was a couple of books I left behind, like I left behind Albert Camus, Myth of the Syphilis or something like that. I left behind a George Orwell one that looked really interesting, but I felt like because I'd not read all of George Orwell's works, it was a book about a guy travelling to like Catalonia and Paris and London and stuff like that. It would be really interesting, but I think it'd be better if I'd have read the rest of the book, so I left that one. There was one about Frank Herbert, but I've not read Dune yet, so I don't think that would be a book to get to read. So yeah, I feel like so going back to what I was trying to say before is like with the books we buy, like she bought a thriller and a non-fiction book, which is kind of where she's kind of. Thrillers are more kind of where she's navigating to lately. But because there's not really, apart from, there's not really a section that I wouldn't enter. I didn't really look at children's books, but I was thinking I could have a look for my son for Christmas, but I think the thing is with children's books, it's quite personal to the child. I find it's hard to choose. I know he likes Harry Potter and stuff, but yeah, like I got a lot. I mean, I got 6 books, and I think only 2 of them are from the same section. So that shows you how diverse my reading tastes are. I'm not trying to make myself look big-headed or trying to look at me. I read diversely. I just mean it's quite interesting that if I go into a bookshop, everything's interesting. There's not like I'm not shut off by, oh, I can't read that because it's self-help, or I can't read that because it's this. I'm reading a self-help book at the minute. I'm reading, short story collections. I'm reading, about comic books, about the state of comics. I'm reading non-fiction. I'm reading diversely as it is. So, yeah. I don't really know where I went off in that tangent, but it's a really cool place, really friendly. I'd go again. I don't know how often I'd go because, like I say, it's a far drive. And I think if I was going again, like I say, I'd want to get there, probably leave earlier, get there earlier, have some lunch, and then come away. But the thing is, by the time we got there, then we was hungry on the way back. So then I'll just say this last story before I show you the books. We stopped off for we were looking for somewhere on the way back, and I spotted Stakeland. So we went in there. It was I think it was towards Glossop on the way back. And we got calamari and chicken skewers and shared that. And then we had Chateaubriand, or something like that. That was really nice. Steak and fries and peppercorn sauce and like half a tomato and half a big mushroom, which was really good. And then sticky toffee pudding. And then, yeah, it was a really good day. But I just feel like that day I'd have liked to have been able to read a couple of chapters of one of my new books or continue with the book I took with me, which was Firestars, which I'm really enjoying, but I'll catch up with that on Thursday's video. So I'm going to show off my novels first. I'm in no particular order. I'm just going to put my hand in my bag because I'm not actually sure, because I've not took these out since the woman put them in the bag. So the first one, I wasn't sure. I spoke to a couple at the end. I was like, there was 2 books. I was going to put one back, thinking, well, they're pretty similar in the kind of vein. Both kind of sci-fi books, and I was kind of like wanting to get one of each, but he was like, that's a really good book and you can't really not get the other one as well. So then I was tied with what I got. So the first one is We by Yevgeny Zamyatin. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right at all, but this is really cool. It's like a dystopian. I love a dystopian like Fahrenheit 451, 1984, The Road. I don't know if it's post-apocalypse, you know what I mean? But yeah, so I decided to get this, and it does actually say, the dystopian masterwork that inspired George Orwell's 1984, we depict a futuristic totalitarian society. One state where humans have become numbers, suppressed in Russia for decades. It is a chilling vision of a world enslaved by technology. So that sounds really cool. When I looked, I was having a nosy on Goodreads last night. When I looked, I actually marked that to read like 7 years ago, I think, on the 9th of October. So it's more or less like 7 years to the day that I actually picked it. This one was the other one that I was on the fence about because it was like 2 sci-fi reads, but the guy was like, no, it's a really good book and you can't go wrong with Philip K. Dick. I have read The Man in High Castle, and I have got Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, but this is Scanner Darkly by Philip K. Dick. This says Substance D, otherwise known as death, is the most dangerous drug ever to find its way onto the black market. It destroys the links between the brain's two hemispheres, leading first to disorientation, then to complete and irreversible brain damage. Bob Actor, undercover narcotics agent, is trying to find a lead to the source of supply, but to pass as an addict, he must first become a user. So that sounds really cool. So yeah, and I have got a couple of SF masterworks, like I've got Roadside Picnic by the Strugatsky Brothers, so I do quite like that. But yeah, so like I said, I was trying to get one, but like I said, the guy he seemed like he knew what he was talking about, so I trusted him. I'm going to show that one next. And then I got this one because I was quite interested in, I think Eric mentioned in his on his channel, I don't know what his channel's called now. He's like, I'm not sure, he moved to England, he lives in London, I can't think of his channel name now, but he's a really nice guy. But he seems quite a fan of Joyce Carol Oates, and I did get one that I fancied reading, and then I saw this and I thought, well, I'll give it a go. It's called Zero Sum by Joyce Carol Oates. It says a brilliant young philosophy student bent on seducing her famous philosopher mentor finds herself outmaneuvered. Diabolically clever high school girls wreak vengeance on sexual predators in their community. Sorry, I'm really dry throat. A woman stalked by a would-be killer may be confined in the wrong former lover. A much-praised cutting-edge writer cruelly experiments with drafts of his own suicide. Zero-sum games are played for lethal stakes in these powerful, wrought stories that hold a mirror up to our time. Provocative and stunning, Zero-sum reinforces outstanding as one of our greatest living writers. So yeah, I don't really know. I think she's quite an interesting writer. I can't remember the book I've got downstairs, but that sounds like a thriller kind of. But yeah, so yeah, there was a book I fancied as well that I left behind, which was Dennis Lehane's Colorado, or something like that. If it was a novel, I think I'd have got it. Like it would have been Shutter Island or something like that, I would have got it. And then finally I did actually pick up a vintage classic. I'm a fan of these Red Spines. I actually got William Faulkner, The Sound of the Fury. This seems to be a part of a series. I don't know whether it's just a part of a series with regards, like, some characters pop up in the same book or not. I don't know. But it says, depicting the gradual disintegration of the Compson family through the four fractured narratives, The Sound and the Fury explores intense, passionate family relationships where there is no love, only self-centeredness. At its heart, this is a novel about lovelessness. Only an idiot has no grief. Only a fool would forget it. What else is there in this world sharp enough to stick to your guts? And it says here, this is where I got it, one of the most important works of American literature this century. Well, I was looking for As I Lay Dying, and they also had Absalom, but I like the premise of that one a bit more, and like I say, I'm a sucker for a vintage spine. So that's the 4 novels I got. Like I say, quite different. I imagine that's kind of more of a crimey thriller kind of thing. That's a bit of a that's a classic, and then a bit of, I'd say that's sci-fi and that's dystopian, or you can say they're both sci-fi, but I just kind of, so it's quite a mixture there already, as you can see. Where's my bag gone? I'm just going to put them back in the bag so I know where they are. I'm trying to keep them, as neat as I can. Sorry for the rustling if you're listening in the headphones. And then finally, the last two books I'm going to show. Again, something quite different. Didn't anticipate getting any non-fiction kind of stuff, but I want to show this one off first. So, Andy Warhol and Pat Hackett, Popism. So this is like a book. I'm interested in Andy Warhol. You know, he did the Velvet Underground cover and stuff like that, but this says, a cultural storm swept through the 1960s, pop art, psychedelia, Bob Dylan, underground filmmaking, and a centre in New York was Andy Warhol. His studio, the Manhattan Loft, known as The Factory, was the hub of the 60s scene. It was the place where he created the large canvases of soup cans and cultural icons that defined pop art, where everyone from Lou Reed and the Velvet Underground to Edie Sedgwick could be found, where Chelsea Girls and Warhol's other classics were shot, and where Warhol himself could observe these extraordinary times. Antidotal, I'm not sure if that's pronounced right. Funny and frank, Popism is the ultimate insider account of the decade that changed the world. So I thought it was quite interesting, and not expecting to see it there, and just thought something a bit different. So that's about an artist. So I've got one classic, two sci-fi, a thriller, and then a book about an artist. And then finally we've got a book about a musician. I fancied Scar Tissue by Anthony Kiedis. After listening to Acid for the Children. I fancied a few other books. I fancied Heavier Than Heaven because it's been a while since I read that about Kurt Cobain. I fancied a Pink Floyd one, but it was about Dark Side of the Moon, and I prefer Wish You Were Here. So I decided to get this, Miles, the autobiography, about Miles Davis, he's a jazz musician. I like a bit of jazz, and I think his life story would be quite interesting to read. It says, Miles, the autobiography, like the man himself, holds nothing back. He talks about his battles against drugs and racism, and discusses the many women in his life. But above all, Miles talks about music and musicians, including the legends he has played with over the years. Bird, Dizzy, Monk, Train, Mingus, and many others. The man who has given us the most exciting music of recent time has now given us fascinating and compelling insight into his extraordinary life. So yeah, so I think some really interesting books there, and they're all $3.99 each, and they're all brand new. Brilliant bookstore, I'd go again. I'm going to leave that here before it cuts out on me, before I can say bye, because it's quite a long video. But I will be hopefully carrying on with the book tour soon, and I'll be back on Thursday with Cornered by Books as well. So I'll see you in the next one, and hope you're enjoying what you're reading. Bye.